Okay, guys, welcome to the Chason Laing podcast. We have amazing guests and interesting conversations. Never really know where we're going to go here, but we're going to have a good time getting there. And I'm super excited about our guest today. But before we get started, do us a favor and hit that little subscribe button. Click the little notification bell to get access to our shows as soon as they drop. And please share the episode on your social media with your friends because, it helps us, make more. So let's get started. Today I have an awesome guest, Stephanie Parker. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on my little show here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, now you are a actress, but you have quite a few little things that I'd like to talk about. But I'd like to begin there because you're an actress. You've been in some very fun things, and I've run into you back and forth throughout, many different film festivals and things, and I've seen your ongoing projects and all that kind of stuff. So let's just begin. I think your latest thing I saw was just finished filming, correct? And it was called like The Glitch. Is that right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that.
So that's like a sci-fi thriller, but also really geared toward the faith audience for a younger generation. So, and I actually met Justin Sterner, who directed it, on the set of a film that will be coming out that I was in, that Kirk Cameron and the Kendrick brothers put together, and Justin played one of the lead roles in that. And
which one? What was that one called?
It's, I think, tentatively called. It's not out yet, so it'll be coming out. But gotcha. I think it'll be going under the name Lifemark, and he plays the comedic relief, but he also has a videography and like photography background, and so it was really neat to see him really have a grasp of camera, but then also understand how to work with actors. And so that was really fun because he just called me up and said, "Hey, are you free, to help me with this?" And it was also put together by Kate Larson, and she's a younger, it's amazing what the younger generation is coming up with. And I really feel like God is using them to kind of take, I think, faith-based film and, God honoring film productions to a whole nother level, because there's just a fresh and outlook, and also a desire for excellence that I think that they're just not willing to settle,
right.
For like subpar. And so it's so refreshing to see. And she actually she wrote it, and this is her second thing that I guess third, but she recently produced a film called Into the Spotlight, and with some pretty big people on there. And she's young. I mean, it's so cool to see how like God has blessed her talent, and she's already like going crazy with it. So this is her second project that she's worked on, and she just had Justin come on to direct, and he was fantastic. So I'm excited about it. It'll be fun.
Now, so that just finished filming, correct? So it's still got to go through post now. Do you have any idea when it's coming out?
I don't know yet. We'll see. So I'm not really sure, how that goes.
Oh, I do know how that goes. It's post.
There's things I worked on like 10 years ago that I still haven't seen. So let's just put that out there. But
yeah, I completely understand that. Now you've, just to go a little bit with what you said about the faith film community, I know you have a lot of connections and you've worked with a lot of different members of the faith film community. Is that kind of your emphasis? Like, did you just choose that for a reason, or did that just something you fell into, or how did that happen?
So I'd say like 12, 13 years ago now, about 13 years, I lived in LA and had a manager and agent out there and pursued acting. But my walk with the Lord was not what it is now. And even then I really felt convicted about a lot of the stuff that was out there, and how it compromised my identity as a Christian. And so even then I was convicted about some of the projects that were out there. And I think,
so are these projects that you were like involved with, or you were just seeing them from a distance, or what do you mean more specifically?
No, I mean, when I lived in LA, the things that I was being sent out to for auditions, things that I was, getting roles for, there were just some, and it wasn't necessarily, it was just like things that, there were roles that were provocative, or, and here's the thing, like every actor has a different standard for what they think is okay.
Right.
And I think my relationship with God at the time was secondary to me getting a role that I wanted. Let's just put it that way. It's not something I'm proud of. But it's something that I feel like God had to use to humble me and also bring me to a new place with my walk with the Lord. And so I really believe God rescued me out of that environment. And my husband and I got married and moved to Texas, and I was pregnant within 6 months of us getting married, and I ended up putting acting on a shelf. And during that season is kind of when we started our business, but also when we struggled in our marriage. And so it was one of those things where I had to come to the Lord and just say, okay, God, if you are who you say you are and your word is what it says it is, then I need you to change me. I need you to do work in my heart. And I gave him an hour a day for a year in God's word, and God's word changed my life. That year changed my life, and it changed our marriage for the better, And so it required me dying to myself a lot. I think one of the things that was really evident in reading God's word is just how God deserved the glory. So that process of like death to self, which will go on for the rest of my life,
sure.
Is the thing that changed my perspective on my passion for acting. So I kind of put it on the shelf for a good 10 years. And then just recently I felt led to kind of walk back into it, only in a different way, just doing projects that were really honoring and glorifying to the Lord. And we're going to tell redemptive stories. And just having a very clear vision of what I would say yes to and what I would say no to, and being okay with those no's. So that's really been my focus, kind of walking back into this, is saying, okay, Lord, what do you want here? Like, where do you want me? And if this isn't part of your will, then I don't want any part of it either. So, and that has been the most freeing thing, because there's been things I've had to, but they've been, I'm okay with saying no to those things, because they're just they don't fit with who I am in Christ. And I think that's the big change over that time away from acting is founding who I am based on the word of God and who he created me to be, not who I say I think he should make me. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. So if you don't mind, and I don't want you to go into a lot of detail or anything like that. No, but I'm just curious. So when you were leaving LA, you said you had gotten married and that you had your own little marital struggles. And I think that's pretty common. With newlyweds, just to begin with as a whole. And then plus you're now pregnant 6 months in. Yeah. So, and then you said you had this year where you kind of spent that time every day, in the word. So kind of what do you think really changed as far as the problems maybe that you were having with the marriage that were kind of there? And then how did that mold you into a new direction, I guess?
No, that's a great question. So I think, and I love this quote because it perfectly sums up what happened in our marriage. So I've heard someone say, I don't even know who it was, I need to figure that out, but that everyone goes into marriage with a picture of what they think it should look like.
Right.
And at some point in every marriage, you either start destroying the person or you destroy the picture, and only one survives. And I feel like early on in our marriage, I had a very clear picture that probably resembled a Hallmark or Disney movie, okay, walking into marriage as to what that was, I felt like that should look like. And when that didn't live up to my picture, then it caused difficulties, you know? And I remember at some point, my husband even came to me and he was like, I feel like nothing I say or do is going to make you happy, whether good or bad. And that was a hard hit for me. And it was kind of the thing that was like, okay, I got some stuff I got to work on here. And I think what I didn't expect, because really what I did is in reading God's word, I started praying that verse over my life that, search me and know me, see if there's any unholy way about me and lead me to the way of everlasting. And I said, okay, I can't change him. You gotta change me, you know? And so in reading God's word, one of the things that became really clear is that it's not about me, my picture. It's not about, my expectations. It's about God's picture. And I was trying to sit on a throne that only God should be sitting on.
Yeah.
And I think when I got off the throne and gave God his throne back, that's when everything got so much better. And that's going to be a constant thing that I have to redo over and over because we
Right.
have spiritual amnesia and, you know, we do when we live life and get distracted. But it's one of those things where that was the key for me, is to be like, oh, wait a second. This isn't about me or living up to my picture or fulfilling my Disney dream or whatever it may be. This is about a much greater purpose that you have for marriage, Lord. And it's to refine, it's to test, and it's to draw us closer to the Lord, but also to each other. And in order to do that, it requires a death to self so that God can be, you know, on the throne. So I think that's kind of like, in a nutshell, some of what happened there.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. I think first of all, it's funny because, you know, you mentioned that you had a picture that you thought it was going to be, and then God's picture is very different. And I regularly, I mean, pretty much almost daily, have been having conversations lately with my wife where it's like, I thought the picture was going to look like this, and we're so far, like we've left that museum to go to a different museum with totally different artwork, and that's how far we are from the picture. And I think that that's something that you really have to get used to thinking about. And then secondly, I remember when we got married, somebody told me, because you had a quote about marriage, somebody told me the quote, and I'm probably going to botch this, but we're going to go for it anyway. It was, men get married and think that everything is going to stay the way it is. And women get married and think things are going to change. And then neither one of them are right.
It's so true. Oh my gosh, that's so good.
Yeah. So I laugh at that all the time. And then I joke about that. Cause yeah, I mean, there's definitely all kinds of things that happen that you just, you know, I think dying to self is a huge element. I think in fact, when it comes to marriage, I think that's probably my number one element of advice, is to just say, always choose the other person. And if you're both doing that, it's going to work out. But the minute you start choosing you first, you're just guaranteed to start bringing that thing down quick. So anyway, not I'm not a marriage expert. So let's not trust Chason's advice on this stuff.
Me neither.
Oh man. All right. But let's just jump back to you. So you were an actress, then you've come all this way, and now you're back into doing acting. And I kind of have a couple questions on that. But before we jump into that, I actually saw I don't know if this was a trailer or what, but I saw you dressed up, like you were decked out, legit Victorian. You look like the Queen of England when she was young, and you were on a throne, and there was some, I guess, king next to you. And I was like, what is this? So what was that? Like, you were like, it was like, I was ready for like the Old Spice man to come out for a commercial or something.
Heck yeah.
So what happened?
So it's a commercial I produced. It was the very first time I did anything like that. But it was one of those things, because we have our business, you know, Sleeping Baby, and we sell baby sleep sacks to help babies sleep better. And we had looked into a particular company, I won't name the name, but that does like very creative kind of commercials that are funny like that.
Right.
And it was going to be like, you know, $200,000 to $300,000 for like a 30-second spot. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, you know, can't I do this? Like, isn't this something? And I really prayed about it. I had like a time in prayer about the whole thing. And it was crazy because as I was praying, like this idea came to me, and within 5 minutes I'd written the script and everything. And I was like, well, maybe we could do this. Like, could we do this? I don't know. I've never done anything like this before. And I just kept for literally every step. I was like, okay, God, I don't know what to do next. And so, cause I was, you know, scouting in Fort Worth, Texas for castles.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
I know. Well, let me tell you, the crazy thing is I prayed about it. I was like, okay, God, where do I go? Like, I had written a list of all these old churches, because I was like, they're kind of castle-ish, right? And so the very first place I show up at was this, the Fort Worth United Methodist Church in downtown Fort Worth. And I happened to walk down, I walked in the church, it was open, and I walked down the hallway, and the very first office I came to, it was the woman that made the decisions about anyone doing that in the church. And which is hard to find in the first place, you know, when you go to a church that big. And I was like, hey, this is crazy, but I'm thinking about doing this fun commercial for our business. And I don't know if it'd be a possibility to maybe look around and see if there's a spot that would look like a castle. And she's like, well, maybe, let's see, you know, go ahead and look around and see what you think. And so I happened to be walking around, and I walked up to the top of the balcony, and there was this little old door that was just barely open. And I happened to, and this was in the sanctuary, and I happened to push the door open. It was this old tower that had stained glass windows. It was amazing. I was like, "Whoa!" This was one of those moments.
Right.
And I went back down and I said, could we use that room? And she said, how is that open? That room hasn't been open for like 20 years. That normally is locked. And she said, they must be working on the plumbing or something, because no one ever goes in there. And so it was just one of those like God things, and God opened the door. And then we have these amazing, a friend of mine, Parker and Hunter Starnes, who live in the DFW area that do like film work. And so, and I have some actor friends, and we were like, let's do it. And so we made a commercial.
Well, it looks really good. Like I saw it and thought, what commercial did she land? Like that is legit. I mean, I don't want to say crazy, because that sounds like bad, but it stopped the scroll, so to speak. Like I saw that and was like, wait, what? And it looked good. It looked like, the Old Spice Man might come jumping out.
Yay!
So, kudos to you
I'm
for
glad.
that. Yeah.
It was definitely on a budget, but
well, everything's on a budget.
We made it work. We made it work. It was fun. We have actually a longer commercial that should be coming out soon that actually involves like Regal Gardens. And there's a knight and an ogre and a fairy godmother. So like, it's a much longer commercial, but then, COVID. So
yeah, that
happened. So we're still editing it, but we'll see.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing it, because that one was pretty good. And
thanks. It was fun.
It looked fun. It looked like you had a fun time making it, for sure.
I learned.
I'm sorry, say again.
I said I learned a lot. It was like push me off a cliff and figure it out sort of situation.
Oh, but those are the best. Those are the best kinds of situations, right there.
That's true.
I'd rather learn that way than almost any other way.
No, I would agree with that.
So now I do.
Some of my life.
Yeah, I do want to get into that business. I want to get there, but I don't go just yet. We want to stay with something as far as acting goes. So now you've got this career that's now been spanning, where you were in it, then you kind of pulled out a while, now you're back in it, and I'm just curious on acting now and the film selections that you're working with now. What have you learned as far, just concerning the acting? Like what are your takeaways currently that you've developed over years of doing acting and being in this industry that you're like, man, I wish I had known maybe some of this stuff a long time ago that maybe you didn't know?
Do you mean like for the craft of acting in general, or picking certain roles?
More about just the craft, your experience. I find I like this question because actors are always different. I always get different answers, and I like to know like what sticks out. Like what did you not know that you know now that you've brought to the craft, or that you developed that has really just like, imagine I have a 5-year-old come in and is like, hey, I want to know about acting, and then you have to tell them this little bomb of knowledge. What would that be?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to live truthfully in whatever character you play. And for me, living life has given me the ability to live truthfully in other characters. And I think had I maybe gotten the roles back then in LA, where I hadn't really lived much, I hadn't gone through stuff. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I think there's life lessons, I guess, or trials that really, like I said, bring you to the end of yourself. And I think the best way to convey a very truthful character is to find a way to come to the end of yourself and then let that other character then live.
Yeah.
And identify what is real, like what breaks their heart, what do they want, and I don't think I could understand that back then the way I do now, just because I've lived a little, we've been through some hard stuff, and that I wouldn't undo, and I'm thankful for. Yeah. So I think that pours into kind of how I create characters now,
Awesome. Now, do you have any particular type of roles or something that you would love to do one day that maybe you haven't yet done? Any potential dreams? Or you said Disney characters earlier. I don't know, but anything like that?
So I love accents and languages. I'm a nerd. I speak 4 languages, and I love that stuff. It's a fun challenge. So I like accents or character roles, but then I also, really it's anything, because it's just, recently I did some comedy, and that was so fun and surprising. Because it's a little bit different than what I normally do, which is more kind of dramatic. But yeah, I don't know. I do like a good challenge. I like to be challenged. And so give me something that is so not typical. And
Yeah.
that's fun for me, you know?
Yeah. Well, now I have to ask, you said you had 4 languages. What 4 languages do we have here?
German and French and Spanish and English.
Oh man. So you've got all the good ones.
Well, and I don't use them as much as I like haven't used them as much as I really should to keep up with them. But yeah, I don't know. I love that kind of stuff. I'm a nerd.
Yeah. Well, my wife
I went to German camp when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, my wife is German. And of course, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a huge Germany soccer fan. And so
yes!
I would love nothing more than to make any of my German better. But I've only seemed to learn the bad words so far. Which is okay when you're watching football.
Right.
And then of course I've been trying to learn French, but I'm horrible at it. So I'm envious of you for knowing all those awesome languages.
Oh.
And Spanish seems the most appropriate to know since you are in Texas. You can use that all the time, but I still, all of my languages
Spanish
have really
helps.
suffered. So, all right, well, awesome. Well, let's talk about this. So you have a really interesting, I don't even know where this story begins, so it's hard to even set up this question. But at some point, you and your husband were on Shark Tank, and I want to hear from there because, like, I bring this up because right now I have a 1-month-old, baby right now, and this child, yeah, I do, and this child, has already, he kind of went into this zone where his version of sleep is in the middle of the night when he has to sleep right on me, and he has to just every 5 minutes just punch me square in the face and move around, and it's like, dude, you're just wearing me thin. But it is so appropriate to be talking to you. So I want to hear this story, like the Shark Tank. Where'd this business come from? And just tell me the story.
Yeah. So okay, like I said, I got pregnant with our daughter when we were 6 months married, and we had her, and then we swaddled her like a little burrito.
Right. Yes. Love the swaddles.
Yep. They're so awesome. And she slept great in the swaddle, but then all of a sudden she started rolling, and you can't swaddle a baby when they're rolling because then they don't have access to their arms and they could suffocate and all the things.
Yes. All the horrific things and all the warning labels on everything. Yes.
Yes, all those. And so we got rid of the swaddle, and she totally stopped sleeping. We were like, what is going on? And it was exhausting. I mean, she went from sleeping a good 12 hours some nights to nothing. And so I did all this research, and I was like, how do you transition a baby out of the swaddle? Like, how do you, give him freedom, but still give him like that feeling of enclosure or whatever? And I didn't find anything. But I did find that all babies have something called a Moro reflex, which allows a baby to like startle awake suddenly when they can't feel their edges like they could in the womb or the swaddle. And so when those edges are gone, they can't sleep. And I was like, how do I give her edges while still giving her the ability to push up and roll over? And I like randomly decided to take one of my old zip up sweatshirts from Walmart and my old sewing machine from 8th grade and cut off the arms that were wide enough so she could stretch out her arms but still like feel a little resistance.
Yeah.
And she slept in this little, star shape sleeping garment that I created 12 hours the first night. I was like, what? That worked. Oh my gosh. What's that about? And it was right around the time when I was going to have to go back to work for financial reasons. And my heart's prayer was to be able to stay at home with our daughter. And I just I remember being like in this moment of decision, sitting on my bed and being like, God, I don't want to go back to work to a job I don't really love, only to pay for someone else to take care of our daughter. Right. To each his own, but that just was my heart at the time. And then I remember grabbing my Bible that was sitting on my nightstand and I don't normally recommend Russian roulette Bible. Okay. But in that moment, I opened my Bible and my eyes landed on this verse in Ephesians that says, to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we could ask or imagine by the power that is at work within us, to him be the glory forever and ever. And I was like, okay, I'm not able. I don't have a business plan, don't have a clue. I can't even sew. Like I was a bad sewer. And I said, but if you want to bless this and this is part of your plan, then I'm going to trust you with it. And, you know, if you choose to do immeasurably more, then I'll give you the glory for it. And so really took a leap of faith and said, I'm not coming back to my job, and bought some fabric from Joanne Fabrics and sewed together the first Zippity Zips and created a little rinky-dink website with $500 that I had. And by truly the hand of God and no money spent on marketing, people started buying them and they were hideous. Okay. I'm a bad sewer. I am not even joking. There were strings all up in there. Like it is a miracle that these children survived wearing my death traps that I'm kidding. I'm sorry, but they were so bad. And so when I tell you he was able to do immeasurably more, he truly was. And my daughter, who started it as a baby, is now 11 years old. And we've had it for that long. And so a couple years into it, it had grown so fast. And we actually auditioned to go on Shark Tank because I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like I literally had no clue what I was doing and was just taking one step after the next step and then like the next step. And that was all I could do because I couldn't function. And at some point, you know, my husband was working in sales. And at some point, he was like, Steph, you're gonna burn out before you even get started, you know, because I was sewing till 2 and 3 in the morning and handwriting every thank you note to each customer. And, you know, it was a hot mess. And so he was so good and actually went to the local fabric store and was like, hey, will you sew for my wife? And so he found our first seamstresses. And we ended up hiring some people and they came in and started growing it even more. And then it was right around that time that we went and auditioned for Shark Tank. I went to Chicago and you had like 10 seconds to try and sell your business so that they would be excited to put you on Shark Tank.
That's pretty serious pressure. 10 seconds. That's
kidding.
Not much.
It was all about like, what are your sales? Do you have proven sales? And if you did, then you pretty much went to the next round and then you had to make a video audition. And then you know, so we made it the first time. But then and this was when I was still sewing and we were having seamstresses sew them. And we got the contract to go on Shark Tank. And we had a friend of ours who was an attorney from our church look over the contract. And he's like, you shouldn't go on this show. And we're like, what? And he goes, for a couple reasons. First of all, the producers take 5% of your business, even if you don't get a deal. And that was the deal then. And second of all, you are still sewing everything yourself. You don't know what kind of standards, like you could come under some serious slack for doing all this. And we had no idea about the regulations, the test, like we had no idea about this stuff at this point, because we were still like, you know, doing it out of our living room and garage at this point. He's like, don't go on there. And I and my husband really said, we shouldn't go on there. And me, I'm like, well, why would God open the door if we weren't supposed to go on the show? And it was devastating to me, but kind of, I just really sought the Lord and I felt like I was supposed to honor him in that decision. And it sucked. Like it was a painful death to self in that moment. That was the hard one, but it was also the best thing we could have done. So we said no the first time around. And sometimes no is the best yes. And it was, because in that interim time before the second time we actually auditioned for Shark Tank, we were able to find a manufacturer. We were able to comply with all the testing and all the and beef up like our website, because that's the big common thing is the Shark Tank effect shuts down all the websites when it airs and stuff like that. And so at that point, my husband quit his job and really was so good about, he is a big picture person. Like he's able to put, he's my detail oriented, like process type person. And I create stuff. I'm not an Excel sheet girl. I just know that about myself, you know? And so really it took both of us to kind of get it to a place where, okay, it's time to like try it again, because we were growing. The second time we went on, we ended up on Shark Tank. We had done $1 million in sales from the beginning of our business. And we went on the show, you know, and got a deal with Damon John. We got 3 offers, and then one that we took with Damon John. And then it was interesting because like they offer things different in the tank than they do on paper.
Yeah.
So it's it was an amazing experience, and we would never do it differently. But we ended up deciding, because he's more of a retail guy and we were online, like that was our niche, was online sales. And he kind of wanted to do licensing where we would get like 5% of the wholesale cost of someone else owning our brand, essentially. And we just weren't in the position where we wanted to do that. But what was also interesting is from the time we aired, which you have this Shark Tank effect where it's like, it just explodes, all of it explodes in your face. Like we were getting 300 emails a day and there were only 2 of us answering emails. You know, we thought we'd had enough product that we'd ordered from our manufacturer that would last us like 9 months, and it lasted us like 2 weeks. And people were buying used zippity zips on eBay for like $120 because we didn't have any in stock. And the fulfillment company that we had misshipped and didn't ship like 1,200 of our orders. It was a hot mess. It was just like a hot mess express. But because of that, it forced us to really refine things, to figure things out. And what we thought we needed Damon John's help for, we had to figure out to survive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when it came time to like actually sign the thing, we decided to say no. And it was like a really good parting. He's a great dude, you know? But again, that was a great no for us. And we were able to retain like full ownership of our business. And so that was a huge blessing as well. And so, yeah, it was just a big whirlwind. I don't know. Do you have any questions about all?
No, I find it a fascinating story. I think what you had really going for you on your side is any parent who is dealing with a child who's not sleeping is ready to just cough up money for anything. And I have been there many times. And so it doesn't matter how ugly you made that thing. It could be the most hideous thing on the planet. And I would still pay a premium just to make that kid shut it for the night, you know, just for a few hours. It's amazing how ridiculous everything narrows down. And you're like, I'll give you an Xbox if you will make this, child sleep, please. So you definitely had that going for you. But I like how and I'm a big business guy. I like reading the books. I like seeing how businesses are born and developed and marketing. And I like all that stuff. And I just find it, you hit it right on the head that there was a niche there and you saw an opportunity and you made a good product. And I know for a fact, because Cassie has one. I did not know it was yours until I told her that I was interviewing you. She's like, oh, well, we use that thing. And I was like, what thing? And she's like, it's the Swaddle that has the but the little hands. And I was like, what do you mean the little hands? I was like, what's she talking about? And then she showed, I was like, oh yeah, we've had that for a while, And she's like, yeah, that's them. I'm like, that's them? I thought she was an actress. She's like, no, they were on Shark Tank, and it just blew my mind.
Funny.
My mind was blown. Had no idea. And so that's when I started doing research, and I was like, this is just straight up crazy. So, just fantastic. Very interesting. Just the whole story is very interesting. So is that business still going pretty good, or where does it stand now?
Yeah, it's doing well. We've recently launched a Swaddle as well, and so we're in all the countries, and it's just God has done immeasurably more. That's all I have to say, and not truly for His glory, because it is, and it's also really cool to see like my husband has a very different gifting set than I do, and just to see how God knew what He was doing, and He needed both of us to make it happen. And I think, He really truly is an amazing CEO, from a just knowing what processes to put in place. I make the fun creative designs. I maybe make a commercial that involves princesses and every once in a while, but he really and truly is such a rock star and has brought it to a whole new level. And really, it's been a crazy, awesome journey that sometimes I'm like, really, Lord, like, we don't deserve this, what you've done. So, and he really does deserve the glory for it.
Well, that's amazing. It is a fantastic story. I'm looking forward to the book version and then eventually the movie when you make a movie about it. It's called Swaddle Me Now, or Swaddle Me in Love. I don't know, something.
Oh, that's funny.
You could do part of it in German, part of it in French. Oh, man.
There you go.
Oh,
yes.
Man. All right, so I got a couple other things. So following you, I see your social media feed. You got a pretty decent Facebook feed going, and you have a good social media presence on Instagram. And I'm just kind of curious, and I like to ask people, what do you get out of your social media presence? Do you find that it helps with your networking, or is it just something fun that you do that you just kind of put it out there and you don't think about it? Or how does it, as far as, especially considering you do acting and you do business, how do you use social media? What's effective? What's not effective? I'm just curious because you definitely have robust accounts. Your Instagram is well kept up. You have good posts on there. I see them. So I'm just curious your thoughts on it.
I think social media can be a dangerous thing. I do. And I've fallen into that trap a few times with our business in particular. And so it's something like, I feel like it's a necessary evil in a lot of ways. And it can be a tool that God uses to put like the gifts that he's given us. It's not, we're not hiding them or burying them in a field. Like when Jesus talks about the talents and like, don't bury them in a field. And like, I really believe that it's our job, especially as creatives, to use what God's given us and at least put it out there so that he can put us where he wants us, if that means. So I usually just use that honestly to like update what I'm doing in acting or whatever. Like I don't even have a personal Instagram page because I can't even keep up with the Facebook one I have that is a personal page.
Right.
So, and I also know, I had to learn a really hard lesson. So I also created 2 children's books, called The Shepherd's Treasure, which is like basically a Christian alternative to a common, tradition that a lot of people do at Christmas that involves a little elf. So,
yes. Oh my goodness.
But I have to be careful with that because what happened is I started out that Facebook page that I had created for The Shepherd's Treasure, and we decided to self-publish. And so it was on us to build an audience, right? And so I had to get really good at understanding how to reach my target audience, which are moms that are buying for their kids something that keeps their eyes fixed on Jesus, right? So I got really good at that. And it became also a really neat opportunity for me to put in front of people God's word and what things that God had laid on my heart. And we grew it very quickly to like 50,000 people on our page. And but in some of my posts, I would say that our product was a Christian alternative to the elf. And I won't say the full name because it's trademark.
I got you. We won't. Shh.
Yes. But we got shut down because of using that name. And it was after spending all that time building that audience and investing so much. And I started out posting a lot of that stuff for good purposes. And it became then about, okay, how many people liked it? How many people are following it? How many, how is it trending? Is it like what's the click-through ratio? And it became something it shouldn't have become. Right. And, you start wrapping without even knowing it, kind of part of your identity in that almost. And so when it was taken away, I had to come to terms with the fact, like, would I be okay, let's say with my Zippity Zip, if someone created a product like my product and used my brand name to promote their copycat product or a similar product. And I wouldn't. And I was convicted that I was wrong, and that I felt like in that situation that God was disciplining me, and giving me a little bit of a wake-up call. Like, this is not what it's about. This is not why you created this product in the first place. I started out this product because I wanted to keep my kids' eyes focused on Jesus during Christmas.
Yeah.
And it turned into something that it shouldn't have become. And so, like, when it comes to social media, like, it's a dangerous thing. And I recognize that it can become a danger, because the approval of man it can suck you in without realizing it. And so, and we're not here for that reason. At the end of the day, we're not going to have to give an account of how many Facebook likes we had, or how much, following we had, or whatever. We have to stand before the Lord and say, okay, in my heart of hearts, was my desire to glorify you and make your name great, or to make my name great?
Yeah.
And so that is a constant thing that I'm resurrendering and dying again and over to the Lord. But it makes me very cautious, I would say, about like being too involved in that. Like, I'll post my stuff about acting, but I also I just have to be careful. I just know myself, like, I know that can be a stumbling block for me. So I know that became a lot bigger question.
No, that's why I asked it, because it's interesting, and I agree with you. I think you're saying a lot of very wise, very true things, and I recognize it. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. Just like kind of you said, because on the one hand, if I had my way, I'd burn the whole thing to the ground. At the same time, I live in a world where I can't do that. And unfortunately, you have to work within it, because it's just really, you just can't get away, especially doing kind of video marketing or video stuff. It's going to be really, really difficult to do it without social media. So it's kind of like a complete love-hate relationship. But I just like your words of wisdom that you do have to watch out, because, and I've learned it both ways. Like, on the plus side, it's like, oh, this is, people like this. This is awesome. I feel so good. And then, why aren't people liking it? I feel so bad. Nobody's liking this thing. And eventually you got to get to the point where, like, I feel like I've finally grown enough. Maybe I've been beat down enough where I've developed enough where I feel like I could care less, because I know somebody's hating this already. Someone's already making some bad post about it. And I've kind of gotten used to just like, I don't even care, whatever, if this all burned down tomorrow, no one's going to care if Chason had 3 likes or 50,000 likes or whatever. Who cares?
Exactly.
So I think it's good to have that attitude. Well, I only have time, unfortunately, for one more question, so maybe we can do it. And I'm just curious. So you do a lot of faith and film work as far as acting goes. And I've met you multiple times at, Christian festivals and conferences. And so I'm just kind of curious, what do you think the Christian faith film world is doing right? What are they doing wrong? Where can we improve? What's your view of the state of the Christian film as it is in 2022?
I think it's getting better. I do. But I do think we're still like 100 years behind Hollywood a little bit on some levels, in terms of like the quality. And I will say, like, I've seen an incredible, there was nothing like this 12 years ago when I was in Hollywood. There really wasn't. The only ones that were doing this was the Kendricks. And really at that time, I think way back then that were in maybe big box theaters or whatever at that time. And it's been really neat to see that it has gotten better. But I think the big thing that I struggle with seeing, and this is not an easy thing, is just coming up with strong story. Yeah. And story that isn't necessarily so. I think it's important to have redemptive and clear gospel presentations, but not necessarily to where like it's necessarily banged on your head. Does that make sense? Oh yeah. But I also think that there is a place for that. Like, for example, I love what the Kendrick brothers do. They do what they do incredibly well. And I challenge many people, like, can you get through one of those films without crying, without it touching you in some way, and they have a ministry, right? And there are different parts of that ministry. Some of it's to plant the seed and some of it's to water it and make it grow, in that regard. I don't know. I believe that we really need to work on making sure our stories are strong before we film anything. The other thing that I struggle with as an actor is like, because I'm not, and I shouldn't say this, but I'm not doing this for the money. I don't do this because like I want to get a paycheck, but I also think we need to be careful with saying, God called me to do this, but then they just like go into it without any of the resources to do it in excellence at all. Like I get low budget or whatever, but let's not do it unless it's going to be God honoring in terms of the level of quality that's being put out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting trend, but I kind of, as a filmmaker, I also understand why. You know, because I've been doing this, and I've been a part of this industry now for almost, I mean, if you count church stuff, 15, 20 years now. And one of the things I notice is that on the one hand, you want to get that quality really high. But I also think that the Christian community is one of the hardest communities to raise any money from my own experience. And so it's like, on the one hand, it's like, if I sit around waiting on the Christians to fund, nothing will get made. So in the end, it's like, well, you know, God, if you want to use me as a filmmaker, what do you do then? And so that's kind of where that's where I find out. And the truth is that Hollywood does not care. Hollywood makes money, and they're a money-making machine. They don't care about faith. They don't really care about message. If it makes money, that's really their bottom line. But the Christian world is opposite that in the sense that they do very much care for message being in the film and how it's going to be. And quality is usually second to the message in the faith industry. And so I feel like it does create a conundrum because, you know, I agree with you. I think quality has gotten better for sure in the last decade. And at the same time, we're still not on par with anything else. But I largely think it's because of money and because, you know, the truth is I could talk about this for a long time.
I know, but I would love to hear about this and your perspective on that. It's a hard thing. Like, and I wish I don't have all the answers to this because I haven't been on your side necessarily, you know, from making a feature film from start to finish, which is incredible that you've undertaken that and you have done it in excellence, by the way. And it's really funny that last one you did.
Thank you. Appreciate
that. So no, I'd love to, you know, pick your brain about that because I think there's gotta be a better way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I should have left the whole podcast. What we'll do is I'll schedule you again. We'll do a whole podcast just to talk about this because I get this request all the time, and I can't guarantee. You know, I definitely don't have all the solutions. But what I have developed over time is a different, more robust view of this industry from all the different sides. You know, I'm seeing it from the distributor side and from the actor side, from the filmmaker side. And it is extremely tricky. The whole thing is a very tricky thing. And I think you can see a lot of people's hearts seem to be in the right place about it. And I'm encouraged by that. At the same time, I think the Christian industry is a very hard one. I feel like it's more difficult than the secular industry. For some of those same reasons. So it's, you know, when I see people like you doing, you know, faith and film and you're doing acting and you're staying current, you know, I can applaud you and say, you know, you might think, well, you know, this is not the most high budgeted thing or, you know, they're working with whatever, but I can still greatly appreciate it because it is a needed realm. And, you know, it is still growing. Like it's not a tapped market by any means. And so I think that's a good thing.
There's so much space for growth in this. Like it can become, I really and truly believe that God can, just like with our business, do immeasurably more than what we could ask or imagine with the little bit that we have. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's a master at that. That's what he does well is take very little and make it amazing. And we see that with, like I was mentioning with the Kendricks, they start, you know, the way they started. And it's just it's cool to see when God is able to do that and really bless it and grow it. And I do think that there's a process to that, right? Like had we said yes to Shark Tank the first time,
you would probably have regretted it. Yeah.
We'd be out of business. We wouldn't even have a business.
Yeah.
And so it took, I think there's these building blocks that God has to take us through before maybe we're ready to take that film to the next level, or we're ready to build that story that's going to then reach a much bigger audience. But you can't just start out doing that, right? Like, I get that. You can't just start out being in all the theaters and doing all the things.
Yeah.
People don't often know the backstory that goes into it. Like the sewing in my living room until 2 and 3 in the morning. That's what happens with filmmakers on a different level.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's amazing. I mean, you've done an amazing job with that, but I know I can't imagine it's a discouraging business too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's that's a whole nother podcast, because I could definitely go down that road in a dark way, but we don't have to do that. I kind of wanted to keep the focus more on you and what you got going on.
No, I mean, like, it's interesting to me. I'm going to interview you next time. I don't have a podcast.
Fair game. Fair game. Fair game. I like these conversations. Well, we're going to wrap it up with that, and we'll come back for round 2 later, Stephanie, if that's cool with you. Cool. All right, guys. Well, this has been the Chason Laing podcast. You'll find all the relevant links from today's show in the show notes, including all of Stephanie Parker's links. And she's got a bunch to like her, follow her, check out her business. You will love it. And if you're a parent, you really need to look into it. Sponsor, something like that. I can totally get behind your products. Also, if you enjoyed the show, please hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell to be alerted when our next episode drops, if I can even talk. That is all for this episode, folks. Y'all go get after it.